So the bodice, as I showed you the pattern pieces, really is a very, very simple construction. It's got a front and a side panel, which you can see here, and two backs that are seamed down the center. So what you need to do, and you can do this in any order that you want, but you need to complete the fronts and you need to complete all four pieces of the back in order to put them together. You're going to, using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, you're going to sew down the center of the back. You're going to press that seam open. You're going to clip into this about 2 inches down and another inch. This is sort of like where the waist will, the skirt will flare out. So you want a little bit of an ease there. And then I think, hopefully I'm not being condescending to anyone but I know that some people have a little bit of a hard time with this. These panels need to be sort of eased. These side panels need to be eased into this inner curve. And the way that I suggest to do that, and in most cases, not in most cases, but in some cases in antique clothing or reproduction clothing, these sort of side panels, backside panels, will stop at the bottom of the basque or the back. But in this case, this actually forms another one of these sort of like, I guess, crenellated patterns that you can see here. So what we're going to be doing, because that is uneven, you can see it projects down here, and on your pattern piece, there's a little bit of a clip in the pattern piece, but you're going to start at the top, and you're going to just very carefully pin this in position. Really, the important thing here is that you don't want to see any puckers or sort of any, uneven places when this is sewn and completed. But you're just going to keep pinning that down, making sure that your edges meet. So you will just continue pinning that down. You see how that projects past the side piece? Well, you're going to take a little tiny clip into your side piece, so when you iron it, it can just basically lay flat. And there's no need to finish these seams because this will be covered with a lining. So what you're going to want to do is, after you've done that, and you might even want to just clip into this curve. I didn't do that, but I think that sometimes it helps things to just lie a little flatter. You're going to want to press this towards the back and just look at it from the front to make sure that it's nice and clean, and then press it from the front. So basically I'm doing this all by hand, but you could do this by machine if you want. I just, very long seams, I prefer the machine. If you're dealing with tarlatan, I prefer the machine for strength. But I do, as I said, most of my sewing by hand because I just feel like I have more control. And and I really like the way that hand sewing looks on silk too. It just feels like it's a little, I'm not going to say finer, but I don't know. I just like it. And I know there are a lot of accomplished sewing machine users who do these kits. So I just want to show you, my stitches are relatively small. I just do a running stitch, and I take a back stitch every couple of stitches for strength. And in this case, because I think I had too large a seam allowance in the first costume I had made, I'm very carefully marking my 1/4 inch seam allowance so I can make sure that I maintain that, and this will hopefully fit perfectly. So the bodice front has to be, I don't like that little thing here. I'm going to clip it and press it. Okay, so there's some things you see in the light of day that you don't see at night. So basically, what we're doing here is we have cut the dart that's in your pattern piece. We've cut that dart into the fabric all the way up until the the top bit. We're not going through this point. We're just cutting it very close. And then what you're going to do is you're going to bring these two cut edges together. And it's kind of like a little similar to what you were just doing with the back in terms of easing it. You're going to want to ease this in. You want this to be like it's just a nice smooth seam. So again, if you're sewing by hand, you're going to be using very small stitches, like 10 stitches per inch. By machine, 10 stitches per inch, just so it's a nice tight seam. And I'm just going to keep going all the way down. In this case, this also does not meet. This edge does not meet this edge because it forms another one of those crenellations. So that's fine. That's intentional. Don't be worried about it. So I'm not going to bore you with all of this pinning. But once you've got that pinned, you're going to sew this with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Now, because you have a fold up here, I'm just going to make a little mark and then bring it down to the 1/4 of an inch. Probably that's a little bit less than a 1/4, but you're not going to be doing a 1/4 of an inch up here. It's just going to be a little bit above the cut. Make sure that you're really being careful about knotting your thread because you don't want it to pull apart. And then you're just doing the 1/4 of an inch all the way around. So I use the Frixion sometimes, even though I always like to think that I know seam allowances. See, this is probably 3/16, so it should be a little bit more. But as I said, I sometimes make mistakes. So I like to be precise, and sometimes I'll use the Frixion to mark that. So this is what this is going to look like when it's sewn. You, again, might want to clip along this curve. There's a little bit of a pucker there, and I'm probably going to go back and fix that. And then you're going to press that towards the side. So when you're done, you should have two of these mirrored. Remember, you need a left side and a right side. Two of these mirrored bodice fronts. When we've finished the back and we finished both fronts, we're going to first join them at the shoulders using a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance and pressing that open. You're going to do the same on both sides, and then you're going to press, or rather seam together the sides. And in this case, they should meet at the bottom because this is the bottom of a crenellation. If it's a little off, it's fine. You can always just trim it. So, and when you're done with that, you're going to press those seams. I like to press them to the back. If you want to press them open, that's fine. It's just sometimes it's a little tricky on the curves. So when we have that completed and we've sewn both shoulders and both side seams, we're going to set that aside, and you're going to do exactly the same thing with the lining, but it's exactly the same, but for one thing. You're going to, let me just make sure that I get this correct. You're going to measure 7.5 inches only on your lining and only on the back center seam, 7.5 inches from the collar or the neckline down. You're going to leave approximately 3 inches unsewn, and they're going to start sewing again and sew to the bottom. The reason why we're doing this is that this is I think it's called bag lining, where it's actually the lining and the outer fabric are sewn together, right sides together on all edges, with the exception of the armholes. So it's going to create this nice clean finish, and then when you've turned that inside out through that line, through that opening in the lining, you're going to slip stitch the lining closed, that little opening closed. So it'll give you a really beautiful, you don't have to worry about facings or anything else with this pattern. It's just it's a good way of doing this sort of thing. So I'm going to finish this, basically assemble it as I said, do the lining identically except for that 3-inch opening at the back, and then I will come back and show you how we actually put those pieces together. So here are 2 layers, the outer layer of silk and the inner layer of the lining. You'll see that I actually marked out my 1/4 of an inch because I really wanted to be careful with the Frixion really be careful that I maintain that seam allowance. And basically, we've gone ahead and we've clipped our corners. So your outside corners we've clipped, your inside corners we've clipped. Around the neckline we've given it a clip because it has a gentle curve. Between these castellated, I think, points we've clipped. I've actually clipped into this just to get rid of a little bit of that bulk, so those inner points wouldn't be so bulky. On pretty much all sides of this, I think I might need to do a little bit more in another area. No, actually, it's pretty okay. So, do you remember when we kept that portion open? You know, the instructions call for a hemostat. I have a couple of hemostats, but I'm just gonna. This is just such thin material. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to pull it out myself. I think the hemostat would probably come in handy for some of these long pieces, but what I like to do is just sort of work them out with my fingers, and then when they get to be a certain, when they get out a certain, I'll go in with a blunt object and I'll just very gently work out those corners. So I'm going to do this, and when we're done, what we're going to do is we're going to be very carefully, maybe I can just show you on one of them. We're going to very carefully press, make sure that it's worked out, and obviously I need to spend some time working out these points. Let me see, where's my good pointer? I don't know where it is. I'll have to keep looking for it. So if you basically just go through with a little blunt, you know, very gently, you're not applying a lot of pressure, you're just working out the points, you know, and you just want to make sure, you know, again, sometimes I take a little pin and I pull out the corner just to make sure that's coming out. Now, all of these edges are going to be covered with trim, so, you know, you want this to be as, you know, as turned out as possible, but you're going to be covering all of these edges with trim. So you can see, you know, what this is going to look like when you're done. It's going to be quite a clean finish. Again, no need for any sort of facings using this bag lining technique. It's a really smart technique. And you can apply this to a lot of other types of clothes, like men's jackets and things like that. So I will continue to work this out very carefully and gently. Look for my better turning tool and press it, and then come back and show you the next step, which will be the sleeves. Because we're not trimming this yet. We can fit it to our doll, but we're not going to trim it yet. We're going to wait until it's done, and we can do the skirt and the bodice together. So let me get started. So it's been pressed, turned inside out, and pressed. You know, again, if these little corners aren't as perfect as you like, they're going to be covered up with trim. So, you know, don't worry too much about that. And then we've slip stitched the opening closed, and then about 1/8 of an inch from the edge of your seam, you're going to, I might have to redo that. You're going to baste the lining and the silk together around the armholes, and make sure that you do that at 1/8 of an inch, because your seam allowance here is going to be 3/16 when you finally put the sleeves in. So we are going to move on to the sleeves, and when I said we're not going to decorate yet, I just wanted to show you something. First of all, the sleeve decoration is going to be 2 bands of the gold soutache. I think it's about there, and another 1/2 inch, and then that faux fur that we're going to crochet is going to go between them. So I think you could do that when the sleeve is made, but I have to say, I think that the soutache, probably because it's metal or whatever it is, it frays really easily. So my recommendation would be to do this while it's flat. And in order to do this, well, first of all, let me let me start with this. You're going to take the this edge and you're going to sew it together of 1/4 of an inch. Then you're going to press your seam allowance towards the lining side. And I just took a little like running stitch across the bottom just to give it to keep it in place and not have to have that sort of roll at the bottom of the sleeve. But going back to the soutache, I think I like the idea of, well, on the other costume that I made with the soutache, I just found that it frayed really, really easily. So what I've been doing is I've been using some of this, any clear nail polish, any clear fast drying nail polish. This one's Sally Hansen, I think. I've been sort of treating that before I've even cut it. So I'm going to let this dry. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a little bit of it extra, maybe about 3/16 on either side or 1/4. It doesn't really matter because you can trim it off. I'm going to do that here, and I'm going to do that a 1/2 inch above because, again, we're going to be filling this space with our crocheted chenille fur. Once that's, but I'm not going to apply the chenille fur yet. And one of the reasons why is because we're going to be encapsulating that soutache in this, in the side seam. So basically, you're going to have 2 lines of soutache sewn here, and we're going to be sewing over them, and we're going to be keeping those ends sort of secure. Then I think once the sleeve is done, well, partially done, we're going to then, and assembled rather, and on the doll or on the bodice, we're going to then apply the fur because I think it probably would just be less bulky. I wouldn't want to have that chenille contained within a seam. It just would be too lumpy, too bumpy. So I'm waiting for this to dry. And if I can even remember where I put that, blob of, here it is. I can feel it. You could feel a little bit. Now, I don't know if this is dry yet, but this soutache, you could already see it starting to fray a little bit. It wants to fray. So you really need to treat the end, try to stop it from fraying. And sometimes I think even before you cut it, if you cut a length, you're going to want to do that same thing. Just don't cut it because it's just going to go wild. Have a little bit of clear nail polish on the end of it and let it dry before you do this. So I should be really letting this dry, but I'm going to have it doesn't have to be just on the very edge. I'm just going to have it here. Then I'm going to measure up a 1/2 inch from that, and I'm going to apply another row. And then we're going to right sides to right sides. We're going to sew all the way here with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And then we're going to turn this very carefully, turn it inside out. Then you're going to have a semi-finished sleeve, and we're going to do the same thing that we did around the armholes. We're going to baste about 1/8 of an inch the top of the sleeve cap so those 2 layers are held together. And then we're going to insert the sleeve. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my soutache on. I'm not going to have you watch this drying. I'm going to put my soutache on, and for the soutache, sewing soutache, you want to use a thread that is approximately the same color as the soutache, obviously, because you're not going to want to see those stitches. You'll probably see some a little bit, but I have this sort of gold, not metallic gold, but gold soutache, rather gold thread. And what you're doing is you're basically just stitching between these 2 little raised bars. And you want to really stitch in the middle of that. You want your stitches to be, they don't have to be a running stitch, but you want it to be relatively close together because you don't want the soutache to roll or gape or, not lay flat when the sleeve is actually put together or finished. So you notice that I actually have this slightly above this the hem of the sleeve, or at least the opening of the sleeve, because I just don't want this to roll into that area. So we're just going to continue this. Again, I don't need to keep you for all of this, but just keep going across with small stitches. Doesn't matter what it looks like from the back because it's all going to be closed up. Okay, and then once that's done, I'll cut my second piece, put it together, and then I will come back and show you how we're going to insert the sleeve into the bodice. And actually, it would be a good time for you to put the bodice on your doll with her skirt and her crinoline and just see how it fits. I did that with my doll, and I think it's they've done such a beautiful job fitting this to that their Dehor's reproduction that I don't think you'll have to do a lot of adjusting, but I did a little extra in the front, and I can correct that overlap and just have it the closure exactly how I want it. But it should be fine, unless you're making this for a completely different doll of this approximately the same height, then you're really going to have to make some adjustments. So I think that this might be dry. So I'm going to, again, measure 1/2 inch away. Seems like a lot, but I think that fur is quite fluffy. Maybe I'll do just a little bit less. And you can always iron those out, or they're going to be just covered up with the soutache anyway. I'll put this here. And then I'm not going to bore you with all the sewing down, but I'm going to do the same thing I did for the first time. I'm going to sort of determine my overlap, and then I'm just going to brush on a little bit of this clear nail polish and let it dry before I even cut it. Okay, I'll be back and show you how to insert the sleeve into the armhole. So the sleeve's been turned inside out, and you can see how these edges get caught here, so they won't fray. But again, that's entirely your choice, whether you want to put them on before or after. I just think this is a little neater. And then the fur is going to go in between those two lines of soutache. So I'm going to base this and then finish the other sleeve, but I want to show you, before you insert the sleeves, we need to apply, and this sort of the same thought process, and again, you can do it in two different ways. You can apply the soutache now because it needs to go into the armhole or up to the armhole on this front dart, the side seams, the back side seam, the center seam, and then around the other front. And again, I like to encapsulate things so we don't have any like fraying or anything, because this, I think I will show you. This is what this looks like when it's sealed, and this is what it looks like when it's not sealed. So it's just a big mess. It is just what it is. But I mean, you can prevent that by sealing it before you cut it. So I'm going to sew with little running stitches the soutache. I'll start sewing the soutache here. You're going to see that there's about, 3/16, it could even be 3/16, 1/4 of an inch of overhang into the armhole. So again, that's going to be captured when we set the sleeve in rather. And I wouldn't bother pinning this, because I think that it's probably just much easier to maneuver when you don't have it pinned. I might pin it just to see what the length will be, so I can treat the other end with some of the clear nail polish, just so it doesn't fray when I cut it. Because I basically work with the soutache as it's coming off the bolt. I'm not cutting it into lengths. I'm just basically, I think it's probably the best use of the soutache, because you might, for whatever reason, run short. There might be a point when you're applying soutache to the skirt that you might have to not join it, but sort of butt it up against another piece of soutache because you've run out. But it's just good to be able to work with it in a continuous length, really for most economy, I think. Get the most out of it. So I'm going to do this on the seams as I discussed, and then I'm going to come back and show you how to apply the sleeve or insert the sleeve. So we've inset one of the sleeves, and once it's been inset, we have run a band of the soutache around the arm opening and attached it with a small running stitch. And then we've actually just had it meet up underneath the arm where it will be minimized, hopefully, in terms of its visibility. We've also, before we had done the side seams, etc., and we've stopped them short. I think you probably could go a little bit closer than this if you want. Maybe a 1/16 of an inch probably would be fine. And this is going to be covered up by the fur. So what we're going to be doing now is we're going to be taking this chenille and we're going to be applying it to the edge of the garment. So one thing you might have in your instructions that might say for you to apply the soutache next to this. I'm going to try it both ways because it might be a little easier from a sort of a application standpoint to be looking at the soutache as you're applying the fur. Let's see. I just want to, sometimes you just have to do a little test and see how that turns out. The reason why I'm not starting it at the top here is because this is going to overlap this. And we don't want all that bulk underneath here. So it's basically where it overlaps is where you're going to start your stitching. So I think it calls for like a 1/2 inch in the instructions, but I just want to see what that measures out at. Where is my ruler? Yeah, I actually think it's probably more like a 1/4 inch, because what I'm thinking is that when you apply this, you're going to apply it so it a little bit hangs over the edge. Do you see how that works? So it's really up to you. I mean, you can put the soutache on first and then put the fur on, but I actually think, let me think about this. I actually think it probably would be better to put the soutache on because it'll give you like a guide to put the fur in place. So what we're going to do is we're going to, again, we've sealed one of the edges here, and I might want to actually just move this up a little bit because I think that might, yeah. What we're going to do is we're just going to apply this. And I'm not, I generally don't pin the soutache when I'm working with it because it's much easier to work without these pins. And I noticed I got this huge blob of blood on the back of this, on the back of the bodice. I don't know where that came from, but I do not like that. So I think it was the pins. I must have poked myself. So again, we're going to start this at the top, and it's going to be like a partial. We're going to flip the soutache in and we're going to end it there. But this is where we're going to have our little overlap. I might even just leave that open for when we put this on the doll and we can see where that exact overlap is going to be. But I'm going to just keep working down. Get rid of some of these old threads. And then you want to just try to get like as tight a corner as you can here. And it's just, as you see, it's sort of much easier just to work with your hands. When we get to the chenille, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be stitching that in place with a little bit of a small little running stitch through the chenille, through the silk. And I do think it's nice to have a little bit of an overlap there to just, give it a little bit more luxury and not have to see the edge of the bodice. So that's the effect we're going for. I do think I'm going to sew the soutache down first and then go back and sort of fill in with the chenille trim. So I'm going to actually need to do the other sleeve too, but I'm trying to just get as much done and show you as much as possible in these videos. So it's going to be very pretty actually when it's done. And then as you can see, this is going to be covered up by the fur. This will be covered by the fur. I probably would have gone a little bit lower here because I'm not sure if that fur will necessarily cover that. It might. So down here you might actually just go up a little bit. Maybe not. Just When you're doing your soutache, just make sure that it's closer, maybe like a 16th away from the edge, and I think that'll be a better effect. So I'm going to start sewing this down, and when I come back, hopefully both sleeves will be inset, and we can talk about how the neckline is going to be treated. Again, the neckline is the last thing that you're going to be doing because you want to cover up everything that's going to be going on in the front here with this other band, with another row of soutache, then the fur, and then another row of soutache. So it's going to be sort of like almost like a collar-like effect. And there's also going to be chenille that's going around these sleeves, if you can see that. It's really going to be very pretty. So I'm going to go off and do that and come back, and hopefully I'll have made some good progress, and we could move on with some of the, we could do the collar and then move on with the skirt decoration, because that's where it's really going to be a lot of fun. We've stitched the soutache all the way around the outer edges of the bodice, and we've done that 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. I've started to do the fur, but I'm just going to show you. I've left a little bit of the soutache loose here because when we fit this to the doll again, there's going to be an overlap. And I think, as I said earlier, we don't want the fur to continue up on this side. It's going to have fur going up on this side, but this side we're going to leave plain because it's just going to be too much bulk when we try to do not when we try to do our closures, but when we put our closures in. I'm also stopping probably about, 3/16 away, maybe an 1/8 away from the edge of the neckline, because once we're done with all of the fur all around the edges, we're going to apply a band of soutache all the way around the front, and we are going to wrap it around this corner, and then we're going to do it again 1/4 of an inch below that, and then we're going to run our fur between those two bands of soutache, and we're going to trim our sleeves too, and that will be, except for the final touches, that will be our trim on this this bodice. So I just want to show you, this chenille is just really wonderful. It's basically fibers that are woven around a sort of a center core. So in order to sew it down, you're going to want to sew it, and I should have had my needle threaded, apologies. Let's see. You're going to sew it down the center. So if you can just sort of imagine there's a center to this material, you're going to just be doing a little stab stitch and sewing it down to the center, making sure you're not covering too much of the soutache. You're coming just going right up to the edge. It's not really important, but I think the thing just to remember is that you're not going all the way to the edge of the fabric. You're not aligning your fur with the edge of the fabric. You're hanging over a little bit, and I think that's probably, if you think about this is your center line of that trim, I don't know, just visually, I think it's probably like an 1/8. But you'll see. In some of your instructions, it's actually going to probably say to crochet this trim into a single chain and then apply it. When I was doing this, I looked at that and I felt like it was a little too heavy for me for the trim, and I'm just going to show you what the difference in size between these two things. And this, fibers pull out of this a little bit, but it's not going to ruin anything. So this is actually a single crochet. You can see it's quite thick. If you're going to want to, and this is beautiful though, if you're going to want to do it this way, which I think is much, it's bolder. If you're going to want to do it this way, you're going to have to apply your soutache 1/2 inch away from the edge, because this is wider, or deeper rather. And then when you apply it, you're going to apply it exactly in the same way, but you're going to be stitching with this sort of see there's a flat side and a bumpy side, you're going to apply the flat side to your fabric. And you're going to do exactly the same thing I'm doing here. You're going to go down the center. You're going to catch the center on the back. You can overlap slightly. And you just keep doing that until you come all the way to the top of the neckline. Now, when we come to the top of the neckline, we're going to want to stop a little short again with the chenille, because we're going to cover that with another 2 rows of, as I said, of soutache and the fur, the chenille fur. We're also going to trim our sleeves. And I promise you, the next time you see this, I will have the other sleeve on, but I'm just, again, trying to get as much in place so this video can get out to you. So I'm going to continue doing this. You know, it's your stitches sort of get hidden in the fluffiness of this chenille. So, you know, you're making small stitches, small stab stitches, but you don't have to really be that concerned about how they're going to look on the back, because you're just really trying to secure this to the face or to the edge of your bodice. I love this. I love this. It's so luxurious, this chenille. Like I said, I think earlier, it kind of reminds me of I don't know, like something someone would wear at the Russian imperial court, or, you know, something really elegant. And I'm just going to show you, one of the reasons why you want to come closer is this reason. You know, I stopped probably more than, I don't know, I probably stopped more than 3/16 away. It does look like almost a quarter or more than a quarter. And you see, it didn't cover everything. So what I'm going to do is, I have some gold metallic thread. I'm going to go and I'm just going to overcast that just to keep it from fraying. You know, again, it's going to be such a small detail, but it's, I don't really like to make mistakes, and I do all the time, and I try to undo them as best I can, because if you make a mistake, you can always take it apart and restart, as long as nothing's been trimmed or glued or, you know. So when you get to these corners, the little fluffiness is probably just going to cover that point a bit. You might want to make them a little bit squeezed there to give it more of a corner. So I'm going to continue doing this, and I'm going to come back after I've applied the soutache after I've finished this, and after I've applied the soutache to the neckline, and show you what this looks like. There are some additional things that we're going to be doing to this after, after we've applied this trim. We're going to be putting our hook and thread loop closures down the front. There'll be 3 of them. You know, you want to do that after you've applied the trim, because it creates a little bit of bulk, and you just want that, you know, that closure to be nice and tight and form-fitting, and you don't want to have to worry about that additional bulk after you've done that. So I'll keep doing this. I'll come back. I'll show it to you, hopefully on the doll, and show you how we're going to establish sort of like the overlap of the front and the closures. So it's difficult to show you, unless she's wearing her costume, what the fit's going to be like. This is sort of gaping open a little bit. I've only marked with pins where I want to put the eyes, and on this side I've marked with chalk where I'm going to put the thread bars. So you could see that there's going to be some overlap here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this fur underneath where that thread loop will be, and the soutache around to the inside, and I'm going to tie those off. And then here, I'm going to stop the fur so it does not go into the thread loop. It'll die into the thread loop. I might do a thread loop on top of the fur, but I don't think so. You know what I've also been doing is when I cut the fur, I put a little dot of glue on the end of it, and it helps it to just stay and not ravel anymore. But this is her bodice, pretty much finished, and it's really, Michael did such a beautiful job with this. It's gorgeous. And you're going to love the fit. We have one more thing besides the finishing touches to do on this, and that's to put the fringe between these crenellations. So I'm going to I'm going to do the closures, and then we're going to work on the fringe, and then we can move on to decorating her skirt, which is going to be a lot of fun. So here is the front finished. The closure's finished. I have 3 thread loops and 3 corresponding hooks, and I'll put this back on her, and if it needs to be adjusted, I'll do that. Again, stop the fur a little short, probably could be a little bit closer to that thread loop, and then just wrap this over, and there's a thread loop right above it. So there's one more thing that needs to be done to this besides the very last finishing touches, and that is to create fringe, which is going to fill in these openings. And the fringe is going to be about probably like 3/4 of an inch long once it's done. I think one thing just to sort of remember is that at this time it was really all about embellishment, and the fringe would really have been gorgeous silk fringe, but you can hardly get it these days. So what we're going to do is we're going to make our own fringe, and I use this little board because I don't want to destroy my nice mat. So this is called a bunka brush, and what you're going to be doing is you're just basically going to be very gently at the edge, just working down. Hope you can see this. Yeah, just very gently, sort of pulling these threads. Now, it's not going to be exactly even in the beginning, but you're going to work your way across. You don't want to start up here because you just really want to start sort of like taking layer by layer off rather than grabbing a whole bunch at the same time, because they just won't come out as nicely as they're coming out now. So we're going to keep doing that until we have approximately, let's say, maybe an inch. So you might want to just do a little mark for yourself using your Frixion or another pen, just to sort of say that's the area we're trying to aim for, or the amount we're trying to aim for. It's a little time consuming, but this is just a really nice way of using a tool to create your own fringe from whatever fabric you're using for your costume. And I'm just going to keep going down here. I don't need to show you all of it, but I'm just going to keep going until you can sort of see. You're going to have a lot of loose threads, so you can, if you're sort of anal like me, you can pick them off and not have a really big tangled mess. But you just will keep going. And I'm actually just going to, I would really do the entire length of this first. But I just want to show you that you just have to keep sort of moving your bunka brush up and across. And you can see you're getting this lovely fringe. I'm just going to keep going across. And I'm going a little faster than I normally would because, again, I want to get this video out to you. This is not by any means done, but just to show you what we're talking about, we're going to be applying this to the back of our costume. So you're going to have a little piece of fringe here, here, here. I'm not really sure about these two. I think that in well, perhaps we want just do something maybe here on this side, or we could do something across. I think we'll figure it out, but it's going to be, it's really going to look feminine and gorgeous and very couture-like when we're done with it. So I'm going to keep doing this, and then we'll come back and we'll show you the bodice with the fringe in place. And we're going to start working on the skirt embellishment. So you're going to have to cut 8 tabs. Where's my tab? These decorative tabs. Cut 8 from the silk. Now, you can do this a couple of different ways. I feel like the skirt's kind of large and a little bit unwieldy. So what I've done, and this is not, you would have to supply your own fabric for this. I've actually basted this up against a piece of sort of interfacing, or in this case it's organdy, because I want to be able to do a lot of this work before I sew this down. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be applying a piece of soutache. And again, I have to seal my end here before I cut it. We're going to be applying a piece of soutache down the center of this. And the way I found the center, I just basically took this and I finger pressed it, and it gives you the center. This is symmetrical, so it should work. So unfortunately, this is still drying. I think it's still drying. So we're going to, I'm just going to sort of show this to you and not sew it down yet. So we're going to apply the soutache. This bottom edge, in the case of the ones that are going around the bottom of the skirt, is going to be hidden by 2 bands of soutache and the fur. So what we're going to do is we're going to sew this. This probably is not dry yet. Oh, maybe it's okay. We're going to sew this down, and then we're going to do the same thing that we did on our gosh, I can't talk this morning. I apologize. On the jacket, we're going to apply soutache. Maybe it's easier to see this way. We're going to apply soutache about 1/4 of an inch away on all edges. Only on this side, not on the straight side. The straight side will never be finished. This is fraying a little bit, so I'm going to want to give that a little touch up. And then we can sew it down to the skirt. Now look at the photographs carefully, because on the skirt bottom, all of the tabs are going to be curved side up. And you want to find exactly the center of your skirt. That's where your first tab is going to go. So you're going to apply that here. Imagine it has all the soutaches on it, and it's fine. You're going to want to be about, I would say, probably about 1/16 away from the edge of your skirt. You just want to make sure that this thing is perfectly centered. So I found the center of my skirt. I did a little finger press just to make sure that it was correct. Because once this is sewn down, you're going to come back and you're going to run a row of the fur around it. So it's going to be very, very similar to what you've been doing. One thing I didn't say is that if you do choose to do this, I just overcast, it's not really overcast, just sort of, overcast them together. And I think this will probably present fraying. You're going to be handling this a lot. You probably just want it to be as sturdy as possible. So I'm going to sew this down, and then I'm going to come back. Just want to make sure this is exactly centered. So maybe I'll give it just a teeny. You could do this a friction. You could do this way. Now I know what the exact center is. And I'm going to apply this along you could always press this from the back afterwards. There. Yeah. And I'll sew that down. Then I'll come back down and come back around, and probably maybe a little less than 1/4 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch, I'll come around with the other soutache. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be finding exactly the center front, and the way you can do that is by matching your side seams. Hopefully this is the center front. Yep. And then we're going to do the same thing, but in the very center back of the skirt. So you're going to have these 2 centered tabs. And then what you're going to do is you're going to come back and you're going to place another tab evenly here. And then you're going to have another 3 tabs, or another 2 tabs rather, on the back. I don't know if you can see this. I think it's not in the camera. you pin this and you just sort of like put it on and see what how it looks. It does not, there's nothing in the pattern that's going to show you where to place these, but you're going to want to, actually, I wonder. I'm going to look at this when the soutache has been put on, because this is sort of like everything's at an angle on this skirt. So I kind of feel like it might be nice to follow the angle of the, if you were to put this straight up, might look a little odd. If you were to sort of follow the angle of the skirt, almost like you're doing perspective, it might be really nice. I'm going to see. It's kind of hard to tell from the photographs. It looks like they might be going straight up, but I'm going to just see both ways and see which one I like the best. So you have to prepare a lot of these. You have to do 8 of them. So this is sort of like a little bit of relaxing work that you can be doing as you're watching TV or something. I need to thread a new needle, and I will get started and come back when I've got a couple done and show you how to sew them to the front of the skirt and how to apply the fur. I think one thing also, excuse me, is that there are going to be 2 tabs that are going to be coming down. So you have the tabs on the hem that are the rounded edges pointing up, and there are going to be 2 tabs, one center front and one in center back where the curve is pointing down. Now in this case, we really we're not going to sew those down yet. We're going to position them, and the top can be raw because it's going to be covered. We're going to position them on the, you might even move it up a little bit, but we're going to position them on the fabric and put it in place, and then we're going to put her bodice on, because this should really be in the center of the bodice, and this top should be covered by the bottom of the bodice. Here, it's a little bit different. You're going to be putting it in the center, but the bottom of the bodice, that sort of train-like bodice piece of the princess style bodice, is going to cover the top of this. So you want to make sure that before you do anything, before you sew those 2 pieces down, that she's wearing her bodice and that you're looking at it on the doll, because it has to align really perfectly. So I'm going to go off and I will start sewing these. We've pinned all of the tabs in place, and we're now sewing them down with running stitches. So you're going to sew it down with a running stitch close to the edge, and then you're going to be, as we did with the bodice, you're going to be sewing, if I can find the end of this fur, you're going to be sewing the fur next to the soutache. And the fur should really cover up that raw edge well. If it doesn't, just go in and do a little snipping and cleaning up. I am really happy that I had overcast the blue silk tabs, because this silk really has a tendency to fray, and you just don't want that. You don't want it to fray. You want it to be pretty stable and not give you all these little hangers on and stuff. So I'm just going to. So it's not a very big running stitch. I'm just going to take this, and I'm going to continue going up around close to the edge on all on all sides. This is also going to be covered again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew all these down. I'm going to apply the fur. And you might notice, I think that you don't have to do this, but I decided to, on the tabs that were pointing down, I turned over the top by about 1/4 of an inch, just because I just don't like to see the raw edge there. And it's going to be hidden anyway, but it feels more finished to me. So I'm going to continue sewing down these tabs, trimming them with the fur, and then I'm going to move on to the final decoration of the skirt, which is going to be 2 bands of soutache with the fur in between them, and it's going to be very pretty. Yeah, already am really enjoying this this design by Michael and the team. Very, very pretty. So we're nearing the home stretch on this skirt trim. We had sewn the 2 rows of soutache flat, and that bottom row is aligned exactly with the hem of the skirt. And now we're just coming to the end of our fur application. And I'm going to probably put a little drop of white glue before I finish this end, because I want this not to fray. This doesn't fray, but these are threads that are wrapped around a cotton core, so if you really pull on them, they're going to come out. So let's see here. Let's say about there. And I'm going to just pull 1 or 2 out and get this handy dandy weehaw. And I'm just going to wait for that to dry, and then I will sew it across. So it's just really a little dot. And I think the last thing we'll be doing on the skirt is the application of the black fur, but I'm thinking I'm going to do that all at the same time. So probably move on to the cloak first, and then take a look at the black fur. So we're almost there, and I'm really feeling very happy with the way this looks. I think it's just so elegant and sort of luxurious. So I hope you're enjoying it too. Now we're going to start on the cape, the hooded cape. This pattern for the cape, you have to join it before you actually can cut it out. So you're going to have actually 4 pieces, and they've very cleverly marked these where you should join them. This is join L, join J, join K, join M. So I probably would join these 2 together, then join these together, and then join them here. And if you just look, there's an overlap on the back. It's very simple. You're going to cut 2 fabric, and where it says 1 lining, it's not actually a lining, it's an interlining, like an interlayer. So you're going to be cutting 2 of the silk and 1 of the cotton that's in or the Bodice that's in your kit. This is your, I believe this is your hood front. This is your hood back, and what they're basically going to do is come together like that. Again, you're going to cut 2 fabric of this, 1 interlining, 2 fabric, 1 interlining. And I would cut all of these on the straight. So I've already done that. I've already cut my pieces out. The first thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to be sewing our 2 fabric pieces and our interlining together. So if you sort of look at this, let me just show you for a second. If you look at this, you're going to see that our 2 silk pieces, and there is no right side to this fabric, but our 2 silk pieces are together, and then we've overlaid our interlining on top of that. And we're going to sew that all around except for the collar. We're going to sew that all the way around with a 1/4 inch seam. So because I do things by hand, I'm not going to have you watch all of that, but again, because I like to just make sure that I'm starting off on the right foot, I will mark what my 1/4 is and use that as my guide. Oh, this feels like it needs a little bit of moisture. So once we've done that, what we're going to do is we're going to do this. Well, I'm not going to go into the hood yet. I'm just going to do this, then I'll move on to the hood, because it's not complicated. It just, I don't want to confuse you. So let me get this sewn up and I will be back. So here is the, it's not finished, but we've sewn it together. So basically this is your, your hood pocket. This is going to be the neckline. So what we're going to do now is we're going to baste together this opening about a 1/16 of an inch. We're going to baste open this opening a 1/16 of an inch. And then we're going to, with right side of your hood to the wrong side of your cape, we're going to sew this down with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. We're going to clip into that, and you should clip around any of these curves that you have on this cloak or even in your dress. You're going to clip into that, you're going to turn it inside out, and then this is your right side, and your hood will be on your right side, and the seam will be, the raw edge will be hidden underneath the turn back. So you don't need to overcast that unless you really want to, just for neatness. But I'm going to do my basting, and then I will come back and I will talk to you about, make sure I do it within the 16th. Then I'll come back and I'll talk to you about the embellishment, which is going to be very, very similar to what we've done on the dress, bodice and skirt. So I will see you in a little bit, and we'll get this done. So the hood's been attached. As you can see, the seam is hidden behind the hood, which is nice. And what we're going to do, you might have a little bit of this here, but you're going to have a lot of trim going over this point, so I wouldn't be too concerned about it. What we're going to do, and I just haven't actually noticed this one has a little glitch on it, so I'm going to get rid of it. Okay. So what we're going to do now is I'm probably will do the, I think maybe I'll do the cape first. I'm not sure. Let me think about that for a second. I think I'll do the cape edge first. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be sewing on very, very similar to how we did the skirt. We're going to be doing 2 rows of soutache on the edge, 1 on the very edge. And when you do this, try to be careful. I know it's really tricky because it's quite thin, not to go through the other side. If you do, don't beat yourself up. It's a tricky thing to do. So you're going to do 2 rows. You're going to do the first row on the edge, and then you're going to use that same dimension that you had done for your skirt, and you're going to do a second row, and then you're going to, exactly as you did on the skirt, inset the chenille fur there. You're going to do that all the way around. It's going to start here, end here, and then once you've got that done, you're going to trim the collar. And the way you're going to trim that is you're going to do a row of soutache. And you might even be able to do this where you can maybe start center back or maybe down here, because this is going to have a little piece of fur that's going to cover it. Maybe you could do it in such a way where you start, you go up, you make a little V, you come back down around, you make a little V, and then you meet in the center where it's going to be hidden by this fur that we're going to be attaching in our last step. So maybe that's what I'll do. And then once you've done that, you're basically going to be taking your fur again, and you're going to be wrapping it around inside of that. So you're going to have a layer of fur here, a layer of fur here. And I'm going to look at this though, because I kind of feel like in the example, it looks like one of these is thinner than the other. And, this is up to you. I might not do the outside like that. I'll have to think about it for a little bit. I'm sorry, I might not do the inside because it might feel really heavy. I'm not sure what 2 rows of this will look like next to each other. Oh, it's very luxe. Maybe it'll be fine. Okay, so I'm going to start doing this, but again, before I do, I'm going to seal, as you can already see, this that one cut edge is kind of going crazy already. So we're just going to seal that, wait for that to dry, and then start sewing it down. And the cut edge in this case, because there's going to be also fur in the front, right at the edge of the cape, we're going to, or the neck opening, we're going to start this right about there, and we're going to end it right about here. And then again, the fur is going to come here. So there's going to be a lot going on in this corner, but don't worry about that because you're going to be applying the soutache with the tassels, and we're going to show you how to make a tassel. And as I said, these little pieces of black fur. So I'm going to go off and start that, and hopefully I won't be going through to the back, but I bet there'll be 1 or 2 stitches there. We're applying the fur to the cape now, and as I started to do this, I thought, okay, we learn as we go along sometimes. So I thought, let me just cut this thread. I thought that I would start at the center, as you saw, as this is, start at the center, go around, curve, take a sharp curve, and then come back down. As I started to look at this, and I looked at sort of the bulkiness of that curve, and, I just wasn't really that, wasn't really that happy with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to piece this together here. So you can see that I'm continuing down, but we don't have all of that bulk there. What I did at the end here is I just twisted the fur and I sewed it down really tight. I'm going to do the same thing when I get to the end here, and then I'm going to continue this up around. So, maybe what I'll do, because just to be a little bit more consistent, is I'll apply this to the end here. And then basically I'm just going to be bringing that, as tightly as possible, bring it to the center, and then continue this around. I mean, I'm not even sure if I want to trim the neckline. I know I'm sort of going back and forth, but, it's very luxurious and it's beautiful. So let's see, maybe I will. But that's the way I'm going to put the fur on. It's going to be in, it's going to be in several pieces. It can be in 2 pieces. So what I would do is I would start here, I would go all the way around and stop, and then I would start here, go all the way around and stop. So you're going to have 2 pieces of trim here. The edge of the cape is going to be finished exactly the same way as everything else that has the fur and the double rows of soutache between them. I will say, you can see my stitching on the other side. I bet if I was much slower and more, if this was like a commission from a client or something, you wouldn't see any stitches on the back. But this is for me, and I'm doing this video, and it's a little fast, so you're going to see some stitches. But I bet you can do it without it. You just basically take a stitch, before you pull the stitch through, turn it over, look, and you'll know whether or not the needle's gone through. And then it's going to take some time. Because there's a lot of finishing stitching on this. So I'm going to continue with this, and then our next step will be to apply the tassels, and the very next step will be to put on all of our finishing touches with our little bits of black fur, and that will be the end of the costume. And then she can go out and go to the opening of a Verdi opera at the Paris Opera. And I think he did maybe a couple of them for the Paris Opera. So I'm going to continue doing this, and we'll come back. So in your instructions, you're going to see that we refer to a video that Michael did for the equestrian costume that Cheryl Williams created for the Carmel Doll Shop. And he has this great tutorial on how to make tassels. So I want you to look at that. But the one thing I'm going to tell you is that, and I'll just show you sort of the finishing of this. See, when you separate this, you see the 2 cotton core threads here? Well, what you're going to want to do, and it's a little time consuming, but I think it's worth it. If you don't mind seeing the white in there, that's fine. I just thought maybe I'd try it to remove all of them. It is a little time consuming. It sort of like reminds me of you know, when you husk corn and you have all the corn silk and you just have to sort of remove it all. But I would just sort of pull it back and try very carefully not to clip off any of your gold threads, because you want as many gold threads as possible. And you see this has like a, you know, I've used a piece of sort of like khaki cotton, heavy cotton thread to tie this together here. But what makes this so nice is that he's designed this so it will have a little fur collarette that goes around it. And his might be a little bit more complex than this. I think it looks like there's maybe a thin piece that's at the bottom, and a thin piece that's at the top, and a thicker piece at the bottom. I don't know. I don't have any thin piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue this in position. We're just going to clip this, get rid of our little bits and bobs here. And then this will also help for you to sort of strengthen the middle of this. We're going to put some weehaw around this. You know, and also these tools are really, really great for this type of work. These tools. You can get them on the boutique website. They're really, really smart. So we're just going to wrap this around. You might need a little extra glue where it overlaps at the back. You know, and if maybe you want to find out exactly how Michael did these, he'll do an addendum to this video. So what I'm going to do while that's drying is I'm going to trim up, and you could even use this again, sort of like cutting straight hair. Could even use that tool again just to anchor all of your hair together. You might miss a couple of pieces, but that's okay. So you see how that's not particularly even? We're just going to give it, oh, sharpen scissors, please. We're just going to give it a little bit of a trim. Now, it's not going to be always perfectly flat, you know, or even, but you could see a little bits are sort of like coming up, but you can sort of work with it a little bit, just keep shaping it. You know, I even think sometimes when you curl it a little bit, or rather twist it a little bit, it gives it a little bit more memory. Yeah, it's looking a little raggy, but I think if you can just like, you know, just continue to sort of trim. You don't want to trim around too much, but you just want the bottom to feel like it's relatively even. There. And I might even, I don't know, I might even wet it and sort of have it sit for a little bit, so it sort of dries in position. See, that's already looking a little bit better. So when this is finished drying, what we're going to do, and you can do this in a couple of different ways. I have some gold thread. It's not going to be included in your kit, but I have some gold thread. It's a cotton thread that has a metallic gold on it. And I'm going to thread a needle, if I can find one. I'm going to thread a needle. This is really probably the most time-consuming thing. Rather, you know, the other time-consuming thing is, I think, probably putting all the trim on, because it just takes quite a bit of time. And my work surface looks like a hurricane hit it, or a tornado, or something. So I'm just going to slip this right about there. And I've tied a knot. And then I'm going to start to wrap this gold thread around it. Now, you're going to have to do this a couple of times. This is very sort of like fluffy. It's a very fluffy chenille. So you're going to have to go around quite a few times. So you're going to want to make sure you're using a large piece of thread. Yeah, I think it's kind of nice. You can even go around a little bit more. And then you're going to want to pass your needle through, your thread through. Yeah, it's got something. It's not as beautiful as his, so maybe he will do an addendum and show you how he does that. But this is just the basic sort of like idea of this. Play with it a little bit. You might want to put a piece of the soutache around here, but I just feel like it may be kind of heavy wrapped around there. Like it's pretty thick. It's pretty though. I mean, I just think that these edges, these ends are just so tricky because they're always sort of doing whatever they want to do. So again, maybe what I'll do is I will just put this like this, let it sort of sit for a while so it has a little memory. So you're going to be making two long tassels, and these tassels are going to go in the corners as ties. They're going to make two short tassels. You could always make this as like one long tassel, but I think it's kind of tricky sometimes to get the ends to behave for you. I mean, maybe I'll try it, but I do think it's a little tricky. And you also have to make sure you get the knot, as you'll see in his video. The knot goes through sort of the ball of this tassel. So this is the, I'm going to try these a couple of times and just see, hopefully with each pass, you'll get a little better and a little faster. And then we will set them aside and use them on the finished cloak. This is actually an interesting product. I think the instructions call for you to do 1/4 of an inch. It's a little hard to tell what 1/4 of an inch is using this, but I think the important thing is once you've cut it, you just want to try to see if any of it's falling apart because it sheds a little bit once it's cut. And I think this is okay. So when you're applying this, you're going to want to basically tack it down pretty well. And I think that, as you're sewing it down, you're not going to have, a regular shape because these pieces are going to be cut at different grains, and etc. But the important thing is just to get it down so it's nice and snug. So you are, you can try to avoid having these stitches showing on the back, but again, I'm trying to get all this done to show you. So I would say when you're applying the fur, sort of like shape it a little bit with your stitches. So let's say if you want it to be, if you want it to lie a little flat, you'll take a stitch over the top, maybe a couple of stitches through the middle. If you want it to be really fluffy, just try to do it from the back to remain fluffy. But I think the most important thing is for you to take a very close look at the photographs that are provided in your kit. Now, unfortunately, this one, I don't know if you have any photographs in your kit that show the back of the front and the back of the gown without the cloak. But I've actually printed these from the Carmel boutique site. That's why they're so low resolution, so I can really understand where these are going to be placed. So if you look at the introduction to this video, you'll see how we've applied the fur. And I think that's about it. I think, if you have one of these things, they're really ideal to get rid of all of this fluff. I love this thing. What's it called? Oh, I don't even know. It's like Fur Wizard. Really, it's like a miracle. Better than a dustbuster. So I would say have fun and create this gorgeous ensemble for your Dahor doll or Dahor's doll. Someone will correct me. And just have fun with it. Go slow, take your time and enjoy it.
Remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification button.